and we'll be talking about that. But this other option that a lot of people have a misunderstanding or misconception of what it entails, or really what's behind it, and the information isn't out there, so we wanted to make it available. So with that in mind, that's how this came about. So we're going to start with a word of prayer, and then we'll dive into our presentations. And as people come, we'll allow them to kind of work through and have a seat and listen in. But take advantage of this time. There's going to be a recess. We have our fellowship hall open with booths and resources. Try to network within your 6 feet apart and mask on and all that good stuff. But there's like veteran homeschoolers here that have been through it, that have seen the different seasons. So take advantage of that. And so let's start with prayer. Father God, we thank you for your amazing blessings. Thank you for your genuine care individually for us, and just how, Lord, you provide for us answers, you provide direction. Sometimes we don't see clearly, so we pray today that you would give us clarity in the education of our kids and the direction that we ought to go. This season that we are in has thrown many for a loop, and so there's a lot of anxiety and nervousness about sending kids back into the building, sending them back to school. And there's so many options. If they go back to school, you are our protector, you are our advocate, and you take care of us and you provide for us. We trust in that. But we also want to make a case for homeschooling. So I pray, God, that you would direct our voice and our message, God, that it would honor you. And I pray that you would be with us in everything that we say and that we do today, that it would, first of all, bring honor to you. Be with us. We love you, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen. So, as I said, I'm the associate pastor here at Esperanza First. I'm Jesse Rodriguez. Our first presenter, is my wife, Bethany Rodriguez, who I'm very partial to, and gets a grade A on her homeschool teaching and stuff. Anyway, so let's hear it.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me all right? Okay, perfect. Well, I wanted to talk to you, first of all, about what it means to go from crisis to calm. Let's not go from calm to crisis. That would be terrible. So when all of the COVID began to hit, I specifically remember being up in San Antonio. My sister had driven down from Kansas, and we planned to meet in San Antonio for a couple of days and spend some time up there. It was the very end of February. My daughter was going to get her first pair of point shoes, so we were making a special event of the whole thing. And my sister has a very good friend whose husband is an Air Force doctor, and she said, I'm going to go and see them. I haven't seen them for a while, and then when I'm done, I'll come back and we can stay up late and chat. So she did that, and when she came back, she was like, my friend Ryan, he's saying that this is going to be serious. And I'm like, no, it's not. She's like, no, it's going to be serious. Like, he keeps on saying, like, we're going to shut down everything. And I'm like, really? And I don't. And so just a couple of weeks later, here hits spring break, and everybody's like, all right. And then we start seeing the schools like almost dropping like flies, where all of a sudden, I was just watching state by state by state, all of these schools start shutting down, and then parents being told that they're going to have to keep their kids at home indefinitely. And so after that happened, a lot of my friends in the homeschool community started talking to me and saying, like our public school friends keep on saying, oh, we're homeschooling too. And I said, yeah, they do say that. And we kind of shake our heads, no. Not that you weren't schooling at home necessarily, but it's not the same. And the reason that it wasn't the same from our point of view is like you're just being dumped stuff. Sometimes you don't have what you need resource-wise. Teachers don't know what they're doing. They didn't have any chance to get a plan together, and they're like scrambling on their end. Bless their hearts. I've taught in the public school system, and I've also taught in the private school system, and I know some incredible teachers who were just like floored, just as much as parents were, about how am I going to continue to teach. And so we had parents who were at home for the very first time with their kids, and they couldn't take their kids anywhere, and they were saying, well, this is what homeschooling looks like. And then we finally got to a point where teachers, public school teachers, are like saying, no, you're not homeschooling. We're still teaching your kids distance learning, but we're still teaching your kids. And so homeschool moms and dads started getting a little bit braver and saying, well, this isn't actually technically homeschooling. Generally, we're able to get out and be a part of community still. And generally, we are involved in all sorts of different activities, either at our churches or homeschool co-ops. This isn't exactly what homeschooling normally looks like. So eventually, we landed on a name for what this past spring was, and it was crisis schooling, which was very apt. And so we want to take you now from crisis schooling, where everything is just being thrown at you. You don't know what you're doing. Everybody is going and scrambling to figure out what they are doing with kids, whether that's your public school system or the parents themselves, or even the kids who are just trying to navigate how much their lives have changed over the past few months. It's a crisis for everyone. And so I want you to be able to take this next few weeks before you start homeschooling, and I want you to move from that crisis schooling that it once was, and I want you to move into a calm. And so I'm going to give you some resources, hopefully that will help you start with that. And the first thing that I want to talk to you about is what is available from our public schools here. So I'm not going to talk a whole lot about it because I think you guys already know what options are out there. They are offering an online option. They are offering for you to allow your kids to come back to school, or they're offering a combination of the two. And for some of you, that is exactly what you need to do, and we are going to help you as much as possible. And we're going to give you some tips on how to manage your day, and hopefully you can transfer that from a homeschool mom's perspective over into what you need to do for you. So you're here, and if that's what you're doing with your kids, that's great, and we want to encourage you as best as we can. Although we don't have complete experience in that. We're going to give you our tips, and then you can take that home and try to make that work for you. Another thing that I want to talk to you about, and if you turn to the page, I'm going to go through a lot of different information in a really short amount of time. So if you turn to the page that I have, all of my information is there, and there's a lot of different website addresses and that sort of thing at the bottom so that you can go home and take that information with you. So I am going to talk about a couple of different options. So the first thing is the public schools here, and a lot of people are listening, and some of you may be from out of state listening in today, and that's fine. A lot of places across the nation are doing the same things. They have those sorts of options. They have an online option, an in-school option, or a combination of the two. And so there's something else that I want to tell you about, and that is a K-12 virtual classroom. And this is also a public school option. It is free, and it is available in all 50 states. But I'm going to talk to you specifically now about Texas. There are several that I've called trying to get information for you about that. And most of them, when I called them, they said, oh, we only take registrations, and this I called 3 weeks ago. And they said, oh, we only take registrations for a couple more weeks, and then we're closed. And I was like, okay, fine. But I finally got a hold of a place that said, oh, we take registrations year-round, and I really liked what I heard from them. So the name of the place is called iSchool Virtual Academy. Now, in the state of Texas, yes, you have this inside your brochure, and this is on the second page, if you Yes, ma'am. Down at the registration table, but I think, yep. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. So, so what we have is the iSchool Virtual Academy, and they are not in the state of Texas. You are not able to use this virtual academy for K through second grade. But if you have third grade through the 12th grade, you can do a virtual academy online, and it is a public school, but it is offered at home, and you have to have an adult at home for your kid to be able to take part in this program, which I don't think is any different than probably what your options are for online learning at the public schools here in town. But one of the differences is that they will offer you a computer for each child that you have. And I think that this is really important because some parents don't have a computer for every single child, and they're trying to figure out how they can do this. So this is a good free option for you if you're looking for a public school. If you plan on continuing into a public school later on, especially, I would certainly consider this as an option. So you go to ischoolvirtual.com, and they'll have links, and there's a phone number in there that you can get more information about registering. Some of the virtual schools, and I believe this one does as well, they will help you, if you fall within a certain income bracket, they will help you with your internet bills. They will, they have a certain teacher that is assigned to each child, and with this particular one, they said generally a teacher has no more than 12 to 15 students that they are in charge of. And that's really great because then a teacher is not bogged down with trying to make communications with too many students. So I think that this is a really great option. So it's this one right here. Yes. You'll get there. And if you look, it says 130, and it says my name at the very top of it as well, Bethany Rodriguez. So all of this information is there for you. So I would seriously consider this if you are thinking about long-term, you hope to go back to public school at some point in the future. This is a really good option for you. That it is not required that your student be on for 4 hours. That's the other thing that I really liked about it. At least the younger ones. They said usually 1 or 2 hours most for your younger kids, and then starting into middle school and high school, you'll get up to 4 to 6 hours. But I think it was only 4 hours is what they were saying, even in high school. So that's good to know that this is another option. It's not going to take as much of your time being there, but that you still have to be there as an adult to kind of be their learning coach. That's what they call it. And it doesn't have to be the parent. It can be a grandparent, but you need to have an adult that's going to be the learning coach for your student if you decide to do this option. So that is there. Now, if you decide that you want to go, and I'm going to spend a lot of time because this is where we start getting into like new uncharted waters for public school parents who are wanting to do an actual true homeschool. So the Texas laws, we live in a great state where the Texas laws for homeschooling are very few, and you are given a lot of freedom. So first of all, if you have a child who has already been enrolled in the Texas public schools and you have decided that you are going to homeschool them, you must formally unenroll your child or children. And the reason that you have to do this is that if you do not, then your child will be counted as absent, and then you will get reported to CPS for not having your child in school. So we want to make sure that you do this. Now, if you decide to do this, you need to formally unenroll them, and you do that with a letter, and most likely the best way to do it is a certified letter. Now, if you go to, there's 2 different places that have letters online that is a form that you can fill out. Texas Homeschool Coalition is one of them, and the other one is Homeschool Legal Defense, and both of those have letters that they have online where you can fill them out and then get them sent in. Let me touch on Homeschool Legal Defense and Texas Homeschool Coalition for just a moment. I know that Texas Homeschool Coalition has sent a few different things that we've thrown into your bags today. They are both really great organizations that you should consider, especially your first year, especially if you're pulling your kids out. Join one of those if you can, because that will give you a lot of legal backup if you ever come into any problems. And because we are seeing uncharted numbers of people turning to homeschooling, public schools are going to end up losing a lot of their students, and they're going to probably be fighting for them, because fewer students means fewer dollars that come into your school. So keep that in mind. That might be something that you want to consider becoming a part of. But even with that, they do have a lot of free information at both of those sites. So go ahead and check it out. I'm going to be honest, I've never joined either of them, but I know a lot of people who have benefited from them and who swear up and down by them. But I never had my kids in public school. I started homeschooling from get-go, so I didn't ever take my kids out of the public school system. They were never registered. And so as far as the state of Texas, or we were in Kansas before, as far as the state of Kansas was concerned, there was no child missing in their schools. Yes? Yes. Yes. If you decide to homeschool, you have to unenroll them. Otherwise, your child will be counted as absent, and you will be reported. And then you'll have CPS knocking at your door. Why haven't you had your child in? You do not have to register them anywhere else. These websites, Legal Defense and Texas Homeschool Coalition, just have free letters letter forms that you can fill out to be able to send into your public school and give them that information that we are unenrolling from your school. You don't have to register for either of them. It's just a resource for you if you would like. Now, let me go on to Texas law number 2. So you've decided that you're going to unenroll them. You've sent them a certified letter saying that you're not going to have your child in their school anymore. You have to teach 5 subjects. They are math, reading, spelling, grammar, and good citizenship. And everybody says, what on earth is good citizenship? And that's exactly what I said when I moved down here, because that wasn't on the list in Kansas. But this can be anything from Bible instruction to character instruction. This can be learning about our government and how we go to vote. There are so many different things that fall under what a good citizen looks like. And if you are instructing them in any of those things, then that counts. Other than that, there are no requirements as far as subjects taught, or what level they're taught at, or any of that. You have so much freedom in Texas to be able to teach your children what you would like, when you would like. And the next thing you need to know is that it must be a bona fide, published online or written yourself, but it needs to be something that you have some sort of documentation that I'm actually teaching my children this stuff. And it could be just a running list of books that your child has read. Oh, today they read Charlotte's Web. You know, it doesn't have to be something where you are going out and buying a ton of books. And it can also be an online option. And with that being said, I want to direct you to something that I'm not very familiar with, but is another free curriculum that's online for homeschooling. So it's not a public school. It's a curriculum that is called Easy Peasy Curriculum. And right now they are in the middle of upgrading their website. So when I went on earlier today to check them out to see if their website was up and running again, it's not. But I've heard lots of good information about it, and it's all-in-one homeschool.com is what their website is called, and it's right there on your page as well. But this has free homeschooling curriculum, and that counts as bona fide curriculum. And you can go there and use that curriculum, so you don't have to spend a penny on homeschooling if you aren't ready to plop several $100s down on a curriculum tomorrow. Next, I have several other homeschool curriculums that I want to talk to you about, but I also want to make sure that I'm not running out of time. So I'm going to go through the last few things real quick, okay? So If your child is between the ages of 6 and 19 and they have not yet homeschooled or they have not graduated, they are required by the state of Texas to be in school. So if you're not, if they are not enrolled in a public school or a private school, then you need to be teaching them in between the ages of 6 and 19 or until they are graduated from high school. And homeschools are considered a type of a private school in the state of Texas, and public schools still must provide services for children with special needs. So if you have a child who is receiving speech therapy or anything like that, your public school still has to provide that for your child. So do not be afraid that, oh, well, I'm going to miss out on all of these services that my child needs. You can still decide to homeschool and still get those services. And sometimes they will even come directly to your house to give you those services. So that's amazing. So there's a couple of different things that I want to talk to you about, and I know I'm running out of time, but I wanted to just let you know that most importantly, you will know that there's no amount of hours put down in that you must complete. There's no amount of days that you have to complete. And that is because when you're homeschooling one-on-one, you can get done a lot more in a lot shorter amount of time than in the public school system. So when I was teaching in the public school system and we needed to go to the bathroom, it would take me 5 minutes to line up my second graders, and then we would walk down the hallway, and that would take another 2 minutes. And then we would have to stand outside of the bathroom as each person took turns going into the bathroom, and a bathroom break could take 15 minutes. And so a lot of people think, well, how on earth, when my child is in public school for 6 hours a day, how am I supposed to get all of this done in this short amount of time? Well, that's because you're doing one-on-one instruction. You are cutting out different things like bathroom breaks. You're cutting out lunch lines. You're cutting out all the extra things that have to happen when you're doing a group instruction. And so you're able to and you're able to focus in on that one child's needs. And so you're able to get done a lot more in a much shorter amount of time. You'll see in the booklet that I have some suggested times about what it will take. So what are you supposed to do with all the extra time your child has? They should be outside learning and exploring the world, going to the library and discovering books, and then just having the freedom to discover and explore whatever it is that they are interested in. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about homeschooling, is that your child is given the freedom and has the time to be able to explore whatever it is that they are interested in. And that is so pivotal in education. And it's so often lacking in a classroom setting because you are unable to do it with 25 kids. But you are able to say, oh, you want to learn about this when you're at home? Yeah, go for it. So I have a freshman. He's entering his 9th grade year, and he just finished writing his first fictional novel this past year. That's what he did with his extra time this past year. He would sit and write for hours and hours. And I have a 7th grader who spends hours and hours in the dance studio working on point because that's her passion right now. And so you have that extra time for your kids to just explore and grow in whatever it is that they are in love with. And so that's one of the best things about homeschooling. So we're going to hear from a lot of other parents over the next few hours, and hopefully we'll be able to answer some more of your questions. But I want you to know at the end of this session that I have with you that you have the freedom, because of the ability to take your time and not have a time frame that you're working on. You don't have to start school tomorrow. You don't have to start school the beginning of September. You can start when it works for you. And I would encourage you to take the first few months to just learn your children. Learn what they're about and get to know who they are, and then you go ahead and decide what kinds of curriculum that you want to use with your children. This will give you the best advantage, and then it'll also give you a chance to just be a family and heal from all the turmoil that this world has thrown at us in the past few months. And I think that's really important because homeschooling really brings the family together. And I think that if you take that time now to learn your kids, then you'll be able to pick that curriculum out with more confidence. And if you have a child who's a little bit older, maybe they can look at curriculums with you and decide on a curriculum together. I think that it's really great when homeschooling teens buy into the curriculum that they're going to do, because then they're excited about it as well. And start your year out with calm, by knowing that it's okay to explore, and it's okay. It doesn't have to be constant stress, and you don't have to be on the computer or learning every single second of every single day. There's a lot to be learned just by living life. So thank you very much. And next we're going to have my dear, dear sweet friend, who is also a homeschool mom from Del Rio, Texas. She's born and raised here. And she is homeschooling her 2 boys who are friends of my oldest son. And her name is Jennifer McGonigal, and she's going to join us in just a moment to share a little bit more about her experiences homeschooling. So I'll turn the floor over to you. You're going to teach from there? Do you want me to bring this over there to you? Okay. All right. Absolutely. You're welcome.
Good morning. We made it. We're here. Yes. Okay. So, you're going to be getting a lot of information today. So, what? Hello. Is this better? Oh, hello. You're going to be getting a lot of information today, and don't let it overwhelm you. Just take it little bit by little bit. The reason that I'm here is to kind of give you a place to put the information and encourage you to be able to find your way to implement it into your life, your schedule. So, here we go. Did you know that you are already homeschooling your children? Before you decided to pick out a book, before you decided to go to level would be the 4 years or the 6 years or the 8 years after that. So our exit strategy is kind of what we need to have in mind in the beginning. Our exit strategies as parents are, I want my child to be able to survive and thrive without me, which is, oh, so hard to consider. Like, you mean my little baby is going to live and do their own thing in their life without you? Yeah, that's like the whole point. We're working our way out of a job, and it's a little intimidating sometimes, but to be able to balance everything out in a way that supports their individuality without driving you bonkers. You want them to be individual, you want them to be independent, you want them to be smart, and you want them to be able to question authority. You want in a healthy way. You want them to be able to question society in a healthy way. You want them to seek knowledge in a healthy way, but you don't necessarily want them to question you. And so we, going into it, we kind of have to get our brain straight and figure out, what is my priority for my child? Why am I teaching my child this? The question above all other questions that I've gotten from every one of my own children has been, what do you need algebra for? And I'm like, okay, I got this. So there's a wonderful curriculum. It's called Fred. It's called The Life of Fred. And it shows how you apply mathematics to everyday life. I highly recommend it. You cannot get it at the library yet. Once we finish our curriculum, I'm hopefully going to be able to donate it, if they'll let me, to our section at the library so that we can share it with other people. But if you have to have a why for your math, Fred's got the answer for that. The rest of the whys, you have to decide within yourself and within your partner in crime, which is your spouse and your backup team, which could potentially be a tutor or a grandparent or an aunt or uncle. Within our own family, we've homeschooled other people's children other than ourselves, our own children. And we were their backup, and they were our backup. So you have to kind of have the conversations that are kind of uncomfortable and go, you know, this child right here is having trouble with mathematics. How can we get them the foundation they need? Well, oh, I don't like mathematics. Well, good. Good for you. That means that gives you the opportunity to approach it in a way that's not so distasteful for your child. So you take your strengths and you take your weaknesses and you build on them to be able to encourage your child to go in a direction that is healthy and mindful of their exit strategy. So, I'm doing good. All right. So, without quoting Houston song, I do believe that the children are our future. They are the world. And then you're like, oh, crud. No pressure, right? I have to have all that on me? Really? I'm in charge of the future? Yeah, sorry. That's it. You're in charge of your future. You're in charge of their future. But let me just tell you, you are not alone. This is not a path of martyrdom. This is not a path of solitude. This is a path of solidarity. You are not alone. There are so many other people, especially right now, that are kind of in your boat with you. So one of the reasons that this is even happening today is to encourage and connect you with not only other families that are homeschooling, but to connect you with your own children. So a little bit of my history is I started off one of the young moms where everybody asks you, oh, I didn't know you babysat. And I'm like, no, these are my children. Like, I actually gave birth to them, and I'm in charge of them forever, you know. And then what that did is that put me on a path of survival. I hit survival mode running. And so being young and having the pressure of everyone levels, gives you belly fat. Like, no, you don't need that. If you laugh, it's actually good for you. Endorphins, it's good for your brain, it's good for your body, good for your spirit, and it is truly medicine. So I've chosen the path of laughter, and it's served me well. So, being a young mom, wanting everything to be perfect, feeling that the weight of the world was on my shoulders, with me and Jesus against the world, you know. I'm very grateful. I had a very, very good church body that was very supportive. I had an awesome set of parents, wonderful, wonderful, brilliant sister, and we all kind of did life together. But being in survival mode, you think that the world has to be like this. You think that everything has to be done the way other people tell you to do it. I doubted my own ability to raise my own children. I doubted my own ability to be a mom and to put food on the table and to survive, to try to be the best wife and the best mom and the best everything. That's not realistic. But when you're young and people tell you stuff, you believe them just because that's what you do. And so I learned from that that my path has a nice little twist in it because I have a practice set of children. I had a whole set of children that I could practice on. First, my students, because as soon as I had my child, I became a substitute teacher. And in the olden days, as long as you were over 18, you were enrolled in college, and you were 2 years older than the students you were teaching, you could substitute teach here in Del Rio, Texas. So I had the wonderful opportunity to be around years of experience talking to other teachers and stepping in and taking their lesson plans and learning how to deal with the different personalities of different children for 20 at a time. And being a substitute teacher, you get to teach kindergarten one day, you get to teach special ed the next day, you get to teach fifth graders. Woo, fifth graders, whoa, those are some saint teachers right there. And so what I had the opportunity to do is absorb information from other children and be able to connect to other children so that I was able to kind of put that in my backpack and take it with me into parenthood. So then I have 2 older children. They are grown. They did turn out okay. I want you to know. They do not live in my basement, and they don't live on ramen and play video games all day. I think that's a win. They have jobs. They pay their own rent. They have their own vehicles, and it's really awesome. It really is awesome. So coming from the pressure of doubting my own ability as a parent, I immediately put my children in daycare because those are the professionals. And so my 2 babies went straight to daycare, and I went straight to work. And that's how I thought I was supposed to do it because I had to do it everything the right way. And so I learned from that later on down the road, through trials and turmoils and everything else that comes with it, there's always going to be a pro and there's always going to be a con. If you have somebody else taking care of your children during the day, which is traditional in certain areas, you're still going to have to make sure that you have all their diapers packed. You're going to have to make sure that you pay for it. You're going to have to make sure that they're clean. And you're going to have to make sure that what is happening during the day is still beneficial for your child. So fast forward a few years. Excuse me. They went to private school. My children went to private school from daycare straight to private school. Because remember, I was still in survival mode. So I'm working and I'm going to school, and I picked up an extra job so I could pay for the private school because for us it was perfect for my children. You're going to find out through this whole process what works for your child. Your child is an individual just like you. And not all of our children respond the same way we do to stuff. Some of my children may have been brought by the stork. We don't know where they got their personalities. But it is so incredibly awesome to be able to connect with somebody that sees the world differently from you and then be able to help them build their life for their future. So, we did the private school thing. After that, I was able to kind of step out of survival mode. And I realized after paying tuition and hours of homework that my children were not actually learning what I thought they should be learning. So I said, you know what? I think I can do this. And I brought them home and we set up a computer and they were able to do stuff online. And I was able to sit there with a toddler. We just turned the couch around, sat there with a toddler, super pregnant, and talked through the lessons and had a conversation. I did not realize that until that point, I was only an acquaintance of my children. Now, let me clarify. I'm not one of those, oh, my daughter's my best friend, and we just do everything together. No, we're not like that. I'm not that kind of person. I've told all of my 4 children that they can be my friend when we're 26. And so when they're 26, I'll be your friend. Until then, we're going to have some boundaries. And I love you, and I want to spend time with you, and I want to know about you, but I'm still the boss. And we're still going to do fun things together, but there's still going to be a line, a boundary line, which is another thing that is so incredibly important when you're on your homeschool adventure, like we all are right now, is setting up boundaries. You're going to need to set up a schedule, even if it's every 3 hours you do something else, every 30 minutes. Don't go past 30 minutes. You will go bonkers. Somebody's going to sneeze, somebody's going to wet their pants, something's going to spill, and your whole day is shot. Just do 30-minute increments. You can handle that. Everybody can handle 30-minute increments. And if you really want to just give yourself a break, do an hour and 45 minutes. Even at the high school, they have 45-minute classes. We can do this. We can totally do this. Don't put so much pressure on yourself that you're locked in to what you think has to happen, because you are the only people that get to decide your exit strategy for your family and for your children. So, in realization for my 2 big kids, that I was able to get to know them. I was able to get to know not just what's your favorite color, I know you like pizza, blah, 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 whatever, like superficial, but like, why do you not like this? Let's talk about it. Sit down. A lot of teaching is instruction, but a lot of teaching is listening and being able to retrieve information. Your children are dropping you clues every single moment of every single day, and they're showing us every single moment of every single day. I'm good at this. I need help with that. But because of developmental stages in their life, they're not necessarily able to verbally communicate that to us. So it's up to us to be the inspectors and to be the detectives in our children's lives to find out how best to encourage them and how best to connect with them. So, I recommend having a morning routine. Anybody that's ever seen a kindergarten show or kindergarten classroom, that is so fabulous, to set your day, to start off your day with a morning routine. So what we used to do when I was a teacher's aide is we had circle time, and everybody sat in a circle, and we talked about our good day, what we're planning on learning for a good day, and what the weather was like, and what the date was like, what the letter of the day was, what the color of the day was. And you can take that to every grade level, every age level in your children by having a way to kind of connect with a Bible verse, with a song. Yes, I'm a cheesy song mom. Everything can be made into a song. I truly believe that. I may have a perpetual musical going in my head at all times. Possibly. Very strongly. Very possibly. You get to pick the flavor of instruction that you are passing along to your children. But I do recommend boundaries. I do recommend structure because you thrive within the safety of consistency. The world is not consistent. You can have your kitchen table is going to be your first opportunity to give them the structure and the consistency and the connection. You get to connect with these little human beings that are going to do incredible things that you cannot even wrap your brain around. And you have to be willing to know them and get to know them enough so that you can support them when they do things that you would never have considered doing. So, that being said, there's no such thing as just balance. It's not. There's not a balance. It is also not multitasking. There is technically no such thing as multitasking. It is actually, in actuality, rapid task switching. And on a day-to-day basis, whether you're a mom or a dad or whoever you are, rapid task switching. And what you have to do is you have to enable your children to develop a skill to be able to task switch, but because children do it all the time, they're like constantly, they're like little flipping channel TV things, and they're going, woo, and they're absorbing like little sponges. So to build an environment for them that supports that type of mindset, depending on what developmental age they're at, and keeping the consistency and the security that they have within our families so that we can give them a strong foundation and help them move forward. You have to be aware that if you are on your phone and you're writing yes or no back to a text and your child is telling you a story, yeah, no, I'm listening. No, you're not. You are not listening. Put your phone down. Make eye contact with your children. Everybody can wait. Now, I have a job that I get a paycheck for. And then I have a job that I don't get a paycheck for. It's an investment account. Our children are investment accounts that we are storing up information and love and fortifying them so in the future we get to see the dividends that we have invested in them. I do have another job that I have to do accounting for, not my favorite, and I have to do managing for. So what I have done, this is just me, you get to figure out your own flavor. I have talked to my children, and I say, this is what I'm doing. So, quick illustration. I'm in property management. And when you're trying to work on an Excel spreadsheet and you're getting requests in from tenants and you're taking in accounts receivable and you're doing your accounts payable, it's a little much sometimes. So I needed them to be quiet. And it doesn't matter how old your children are, they're going to make noise. Whether they're toddlers, whether they're in high school, there's going to be a level of added noise just having another human in the room with you or in the building with you. So instead of doing what I always do and go and telling them to be quiet, I said, and they were like, oh, because, I have teenagers, it's fabulous. It really is fabulous, but there are some real stereotypes, and it's really funny when they do stuff, and I'm like, oh, that's a real stereotype. Did you know you were just a stereotype? And they're like, oh, why did you do that? So it's funny. And when you call them on it, they don't necessarily like it, so it kind of helps avoid that particular behavior later on down the line. And so I pulled them into my office, and I said, just pull up a chair. Just sit right here. Let me show you what I'm doing. So that gets back to my next point. We're not just teaching our children reading, writing, and arithmetic. We are teaching our children how to live life. And what better way to help them live life than to show them how you are living your life? And whether you like it or not, whether you say anything to them or not, they are totally learning from you. Whether they're learning from you as you pound your steering wheel when somebody pulls out in front of you, whether you have to have that cup of coffee, which I love coffee, don't even get me wrong, but like you're teaching them certain things. If you are teaching them, oh, okay, and they're like, what's wrong, and you can go, okay, this just happened, and this is how we're going to approach it. And you can kind of talk them through your problem solving, the way that you problem solve, to help them add to their arsenal of problem solving skills for their future. So let's talk about curriculum. We've already taken it to another level. Homeschool is just another level of parenting. It doesn't matter whether you're a manager. It doesn't matter whether you are a restaurateur. It doesn't matter if you are a librarian. Whatever you are doing, you can bring your children in and fold them into your life and teach them how to live and encourage them on problem-solving skills, interpersonal diplomacy. Sometimes we don't know what we are teaching them. But if you make yourself aware of what you're actually teaching them on a day-to-day basis, it kind of makes you go, ooh, I need to kind of pay attention to what I'm doing. And, ooh, maybe I shouldn't react that way. And it kind of keeps us balanced. That doesn't exist. It keeps us aware of what we're doing and what we're providing for them as an example, because they will follow your lead. Okay, curriculum. When I started homeschooling, I was in 5th grade. No, I was in 6th grade. I was going to be held back a grade, which I did. I was held back. I got to go to 5th grade twice. Let me tell you, they were both very nice years. But then I had this crazy, ambitious thought that if I did 2 years' work in 1 year, I could graduate with the people that I started kindergarten with, that I went to VBS with, that were in my age group. And I just kind of thought that was a good idea. I had been through public school, private school, and my mom finally, the saint that she was, decided to do homeschool. In the 80s, you could not just homeschool your child. There's a lot more freedom now than my mom had back then. And there is a lot more support now than my mom had, and my dad, of course, back then. Back then also, the dads were not that involved. So he went to work, and we went to school. And you had to have an umbrella school. You had to go to we had to go to San Antonio and get tested twice a year. And I kind of took that with me because it's so good to be able to step back and kind of assess what you're doing. Because if what you're doing isn't working, guess what? You can change it. You're the boss. You can say, this is not working. Let's find something else to supplement it. Let's find something else to replace it. Okay? So, back then, that's how it was. When I homeschooled my big kids, I could do whatever I wanted. I only homeschooled them for about 1.5 years. And then they went on. We got connected. I feel like it was like a whole year of tutorial. And then I got a job, and we ended up minivan schooling instead of just homeschooling, which was not the best for my child. So I had to step back and reassess and find out what was better for them. And of course, hindsight is 2020. One of my children did absolutely fabulous, and one of my children did not love the choices that we made for them. So you have to take into account each child's individual needs when you're doing that. Curriculum. When I was little and I was homeschooling, they didn't have big box curriculums. They had some books. There was no internet in the olden days. There was PBS, and we had encyclopedias, we had dictionaries and thesauruses. Really quick, You can take this picture of a sandwich and teach pre-K, kindergarten, and high school with this picture of a sandwich. You can teach math, you can teach reading, you can teach art, you can teach literacy, you can teach culinary arts, you can teach science, you can teach social structures. Something as simple as a crazy sandwich. I want to leave you with this. It does not have to cost a bunch of money to homeschool. It doesn't have to take pulling your hair out. It has to be you connecting with your partner in crime, your spouse, and your children, building up a team of support, and getting to know your child through the strength of the Most High God and the wisdom that we don't come about by ourselves. You can teach your whole curriculum with a picture of a sandwich. Thank you so much for your time. Did you have a question? In Texas, we have kind of a hands-off approach in our state. That doesn't mean that you don't need to assess your child. That does not mean that you don't have to have a transcript. Because remember, we're looking at the exit strategy. So you do need to keep up with your child's strengths and weaknesses so you can build the weaknesses and really help them develop their strengths. So you will need to step back and go, there has to be some way to document, because in order to allow them to get to the next level in development, you have to assess where you've been so that you know exactly what path to get you to where you're going. If you're in the military, you have to take meticulous notes and grades, because from one state to the next, there are some states that will come inspect your room. They will inspect your curriculum, and they will check your schedule and your assessment of your own child. In Texas, we don't have that. But I cannot highly recommend this enough. Pay attention and document what you're doing in case somebody gets a wild idea and they decide to lock it down again. You want to be ready. Plan for the worst and hope for the best.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Our next guest speaker is someone you guys probably have all heard of before if you listen to KVFE. He's Dan the Weatherman, who actually was homeschooled himself, and he is going to share with us now his own teaching and learning experiences within his homeschool classrooms and his family life. So thank you very much, and let's give us a warm welcome to Dan.
Well, thanks for having me today, and Bethany, this thing on? Oh, it is. I just got to talk into it. All right. Cool. Bethany, she called me and she says, "Hey, you want to come talk? We're having a homeschooling conference." I said, "Okay, yeah, she said, "Yeah, you're not too weird." And let me tell you, I'm weird in my own way. Anyway, I'll talk about that in a minute. I think there is a stereotype out there. But I'm here to kind of break that down a little bit for you. I was homeschooled. I'm the oldest child in my family. I was born in 1990, so I'm 30 years old now. But my youngest sibling, my brother, he is 17. He just turned 17. So there's kind of a big gap between each one of the kids in our family. And so I was the guinea pig. I was homeschooled for I think it was second grade. Pretty sure that's when I started, second grade. And then I ended up doing some online schooling through an online Christian school when I was in ninth grade, but from home. And then I ended up going to a military school, like a boarding school, um, when I was in 10th grade until I graduated. So that's kind of another reason why it's good to keep track of all the grades and have a transcript if you're interested in homeschooling, because that's really good if you're eventually going to transfer to another school, and certainly if you want to go to college. So anyway, just give you a little bit of background on me and my family, and then I'll just talk through a couple of points that I've kind of thought of myself. And I have a young daughter. I'm married, and I have a young daughter. You may have heard Addie occasionally on the radio. She just turned 4 years old, and we're actually we're not planning on homeschooling her, at least at this point in time. So I'm up here going to give you my testimony as far as what it was like for me to be homeschooled. But I understand that homeschooling is also not for everybody, at least not every point in your child's life. So I'm going to kind of give you my perspective on it. But just understand that I'm not necessarily up here to advocate for homeschooling, although I think it's a great thing. I want you to be in prayer about it with your spouse, about whether it's the right thing at this point in time in your life and in your child's life. Like I said, I was firstborn. I started homeschooling. I started being homeschooled when I was in second grade. We lived in California, and I'd gone to a little private Christian school for pre-K, kindergarten, and first grade. And so this was in the 90s. We didn't really have internet. We had dial-up internet, I guess, but when we started homeschooling, there wasn't, I didn't pay attention to the computer. We didn't even have cable TV. So it was all the books. It was all in the books, a lot of reading and a lot of writing. And so that's how I learned. The only time I'd ever get onto the computer, which was a privilege at the time, and if I got in trouble, I couldn't use the computer. The only time I ever got onto a computer was we had a CD-ROM disc of Encarta Encyclopedia. Maybe you remember that, but that was like before Wikipedia and all that. And I thought that was the greatest thing in the world. I could go in there and type in it was before Google even existed. I think you go in there and you type in something in Encarta and you get to read. And so in my free time, if I behaved, that's what I did, is I'd go and look at Encarta Encyclopedia, and I'd type in. I really liked geography. I was really into geography. My dad's a travel agent, so he had all of his clients going all over the world, and I thought that was pretty cool. So I type in some interesting place, some weird country somewhere, and type it in and learn. And I learned all about it. I could still quote you all these countries that you probably don't even know exist. Anyway, but that's what I like to do. It was kind of cool. But anyway, so that's how I kind of grew up. My sister came around when I was 3.5 years old, so she was actually homeschooled through her entire career, student career. She graduated when she was 16 years old because she was quite brilliant, and as it's been said many times before, you kind of go at your own pace. And so she was able to actually accelerate and essentially skip 2 grades. She has gone to college. She did really well in college. She's working on her master's degree now. She's married to a guy who works for Microsoft, and they're loaded, and they travel everywhere, and it's awesome. But anyway, so she's been very successful, too. My sister Abby, she is 9 years younger than me. She was homeschooled through her entire student career. She did participate in school athletics at the public school at the time. Well, they still do. My parents live in Oregon now. Oregon is a very restrictive state in a lot of respects for homeschoolers. So, but anyway, she was at least able, since my parents were taxpayers of the public school, she was able to participate in track and field. And she became a pretty famous pole vaulter, at least in the state of Oregon. I mean, she set records and broke records and stuff. So anyway, she got a scholarship to go to college. Unfortunately, she got diagnosed with a medical issue, and she had to drop out of college, and she's back at home right now, trying to get well. But again, another success story. I mean, she was still able to have a somewhat normal life, even being homeschooled, because she got to participate in the public school sporting team. So, and she did very, very well at it. My brother, Peter, he's 13 years younger than me. I think he's got some learning disability. I don't think. I know he's got some learning disabilities. I can't remember what exactly they call it. Um, but he is brilliant in some subjects, not in other subjects. But he is absolutely brilliant in some subjects, especially scientific, science and stuff like that. Absolutely brilliant. But once he became a teenager, he kind of lost a little bit of interest in doing school, and he actually gave my mom so much grief that she pretty much was like, okay, well then go get a job, and so he went, and he just turned 17 years old. He got his GED, which actually he passed at like college prep level. So I mean, the guy's smart. But he just didn't have any interest in school, and he's actually the unofficial foreman for a construction company at 17 years old. So he has been very, very successful in a different way. And that's kind of what I wanted to bring out is I think that there's like some sort of stereotype or mold that a lot of homeschoolers, homeschooling parents think they need to fit in, and there's like this idea of what a successful homeschooled student looks like, this exit strategy as we talked about, right? Well, my sister Amanda, the one who's 3 years younger than me, her and I are very similar in our academic success and our just in life. We're a little bit similar. But my other sister Abby, the pole vaulter, who got sick, she's been very successful, but just in a very different way. My brother Peter, he got his GED, but he's still, I mean, how many foremen on construction sites do you know that are 17 years old? I mean, he's not even legal to be a foreman. No, don't tell him. But that's what he does. That's what he does. And he does, I mean, if you need him to build a house for you, he'll build a house for you. 17 years old. He was doing it when he was 16, actually. He just turned 17. So, phenomenal guy, very, very smart. Just school wasn't for him. And I think that was a hard thing for my mom, especially, to initially bite. She said, well, what happened to Dan and to Amanda? They went and I got my master's degree as well, right? We excelled academically. My brother, not so much, but he is excelling in another way. And I think, once she realized that, she was at a little bit more at peace. And that's what I wanted to bring out to you is that there isn't really a mold. You do what's best for your kids. And ultimately, you're an ambassador for, on the right way to live, right? God's given you kids as a blessing, right? And you're an ambassador to what, to walking in, to walking in the way of the Lord, right? Ultimately, God's going to take care of your kids, whether He wants them to get a PhD and get a Nobel Peace Prize or something one day, or He's perfectly comfortable with them working at a bagging groceries at HEB. It doesn't really matter. God is going to work things out for your kids if you lead them the right way. And that brings me to a Bible verse, right? Proverbs 22:6 says, train up a child in the way they should go, and when they're old, they will not depart from it. It doesn't say homeschool a child and they'll be good kids. It doesn't say train up a child in the way they go, and when they're a teenager, they won't depart from it. No, because when I was a teenager, that's why I went to military school. Okay. Anyway, it says train up a child in the way they should go, and when they were old, they will not depart from it. So what you're doing is you're building this foundation as a parent, right? You're building this foundation for your kids. That doesn't mean they're not going to fall off every once in a while, right? But you're building this moral compass, if anything else, this idea of what is right and what is wrong and how they should live, so that when they're old, they still have this moral compass. They still have this conscience. So I'm going to pull up my notes here real quick. And I had to take some notes. I was in the military for a little while, and so I just started carrying around this. I got out of the military a couple years ago, and my wife and I just stayed in Del Rio, and I started my own business. And anyway, that's why I say, well, I'm kind of weird, right? Because I'm 30 years old. What's weird? Let's see. I'm financially secure. I own my house. I'm not saying any of this to be boastful. I just want you to understand that my parents did a really good job with homeschooling, okay? So there's a lot of things about the way that I live my life that I learned from a very young age, being homeschooled, being around my parents, right? Very responsible. I was some of the stuff that I did in the Air Force, was really, it was, I was even proud of it. I was like, wow, I'm only in my 20s and I'm doing this. Some people never get to experience this in their entire life. So, but I have to credit my parents. I have to credit not only God for taking care of me and blessing me, but I also have to credit my parents, saying, you know what, if it wasn't for the way that my parents raised me, that would have never happened. Like I would have never been in this situation. I would have never excelled at this, because I remember my parents taught me this is the way it's supposed to be. Going back to the Proverbs 22:6, train up a child, right? Who your child, right? We talked a little bit about what's the right way to raise your kids, right? Not everybody, but a lot of people, they got to go to work. They send their kids to daycare. If that's what you do, and you got to work, right? We got to work. Okay, I don't hold that against you, but what I'm saying is be mindful of who is training your child. Okay, some ideas there. Public schools, right? I'll tell you, I think Texas is probably one of the better states. Up in Oregon, even teach pronouns specific. Yep. Mm-hmm. Gender-specific pronouns are not taught. Well, if they're taught, you're not allowed to use them. Something like that. Some schools, right? They have the unisex bathrooms, or I shouldn't say unisex, but the boys can use the girls' bathrooms and vice versa, right? That's going on in public schools. Okay. In Oregon, another one that I found, this was several years ago, was one particular school district. They wouldn't even accept a scientific for their high school students. You have to write science projects, do science projects, make a little report on your science projects. Well, unless it aligned with the agenda of the people from the school, the scientific agenda, which in this case was an extremely liberal agenda. Unless it aligned with that, it was not going to be accepted. So that basically said you're not allowed to have free thought. You're not allowed to scientifically research something and come up with your own conclusion based on the facts. You just have to say whatever the school wants you to say if you want it to be accepted, if you don't want to fail. That's what's happening in these public schools. If it's not happening in Texas, the time's coming, okay? It's coming. So that's what I'm telling you. Who is raising your kids? TV, right? TV, the cable TV, right? Facebook, whatever, what is it? InstaChat, Instagram, all those, right? What's the other one that was in the news? TikTok or something? I don't know. I don't have any of that, but that's why I'm weird. But anyway, all that stuff. I know enough about it to because I see it in the news about this and that, and I'm just this is crazy, and to think of how much time young ones are spending. Even my daughter, she knows how to work the tablet better than I do, and I have to put all the filters on, because if I'm not careful, she's going to be watching something on YouTube that I wouldn't want anybody to watch. There's some weird stuff there. Who is training your child? Who is it? So I talk about social media. Friends. Who are your kids' friends? When they go to public school, who are they hanging out with? Again, I'm not here to say that maybe public school isn't, it might be the right fit at this point in life. Again, if you're being an ambassador of Christ and you're prayerfully raising your kids and you're being a good example for your kids, ultimately they're in God's hands, right? So I'm not saying that public school is a bad choice. All I'm saying is you as a parent need to understand who is influencing your kids most, and that's my pitch to homeschooling. But again, let's go back. Let's go back to the old days, right? And I wrote an article in the newspaper about this a little while back. But back in the old days, back hundreds of years ago, family units were a lot more tight than they are now. Especially when the first immigrants came to America on the Mayflower and landed on Plymouth Rock, and I don't know if kids know that these days, but there's this place called Plymouth Rock, and you know that. But anyway, I've been there. It's cool. That was a cool thing about homeschooling too. We traveled everywhere. But anyway, So back in the old days, the kids were essentially raised right there with their parents, right? They probably lived in a 1 or 2 room house. Um, especially during the harvest time, the boys were out with their dad pulling the crops and planting the crops, or whatever they were doing, if they were in the blacksmith shop, they were in the store with their dad and their grandpa, and they were learning from their parents, in and out, day in, day out. The girls were going back to traditional times, right? But they were taking care of the house with mom, and learning how to cook and doing all that sort of stuff. But come about 100 years, maybe even less ago, there started to be this transition where men got up in the morning and they went to work. Kids went to school, men went to work, and there was all of a sudden the family unit became not so tight anymore. And when dad got home, dad was tired from work all day long, and mom was tired from dealing with the little ones all day, and there just wasn't so much cohesion anymore. And that is something that just changed culturally throughout the past 100, 200, 300 years here, especially in America, is all of a sudden these family units are being, they're not quite as tight as they used to be. What was wrong with the old way? That's my question. What was wrong with the old way? And so I think that's what I've tried to do in my life. I left the military. I was making almost 6 figures in the military, and I said, look, I'm spending way too much time away from home. I just can't do this anymore, I had a promising career, but I said, you know what, I can't. What am I going to say 30 years from now when I haven't spent any time with my daughter? Oh, I made a bunch of money, That was my decision to make. Some folks can't make that decision, because of financial reasons or anything else. And again, I don't hold that against you, but I do want you to really prayerfully consider what is best for your family. Whether you choose to homeschool, whether you choose to send them to public school, whether you choose to do an online public school or an online private school, just keep it in mind. I'm just throwing stuff at you so you consider it. Like I said, homeschooling isn't for everybody. It really isn't. I've actually probably seen homeschooling done wrong more than I've seen it done right. And I think, it was said here before that homeschooling is basically like the ultimate parenting, okay? Usually, if you got kids that go to school, parents kind of get a little break while their kids are at school. At least they get that break from parenting, right? They might have to go to work or whatever, but they get at least a break from parenting, to a little extent. When you're homeschooling, you're on full display all the time, okay? And so that is something that's very, very difficult for some folks. It's just a lot of extra stress, because all of a sudden you are your mommy or your daddy that entire day, every single day of the week. There is no break. And that's why I say it's just not for everybody. And let me remind you, my wife and I are sending my daughter to a private Christian school here this coming year, okay? So I'm right in there. I know what's best for my family right now. We've prayed about it, and right now we need a break. Okay? Doesn't mean we might not homeschool her later, but right now we need a break. And so like I said, it's not for everybody. It's the ultimate test of parenting. It can be extremely tiring. And you also need a spouse that is, right in there with you, right? Partner in crime was said. Really, homeschooling is not going to work if only one side of the family agrees with you, okay? If only you think it's a good idea, or if only your spouse thinks it's a good idea. It's just, you need both parents, okay, to be right in there. It also helps to have the in-laws involved too, and your the grandparents. The other thing is you're going to have to be as comfortable as possible with the person that you are and the person that your spouse is, because your kids are going to learn everything from you, the good and the bad. Okay, I learned a ton from my mom, a ton of, and my mom's a great person, but I learned some stuff. Even my wife says, "You remind me so much of your mom." Right? And so some of that stuff I learned, my mom's got to deal with that, right? I learned a lot from dad too, the good and the bad, because I was always my dad worked from home, by the way, for a good part of my childhood. He's a self-employed travel agent, so he worked from home a lot too. So he was very involved in the homeschooling, and I learned a lot from him, the good and the bad. I learned a lot from my grandparents because I'd go visit my grandparents at least once a week, and I learned a lot from them too. So there's a little bit of me, the good and the bad, that I've learned, but I was always around them, always around them. So if you have something going on in your life right now, or your spouse has something going on in their life right now that maybe you just don't feel comfortable with, your kids learning that, there's something that you need to work out between you and your spouse, or you need to work out between you and God, and you really don't want your kids to be privy to that, maybe homeschooling, maybe right now homeschooling is not the best idea right now. Doesn't mean it won't be in the future, but I'm just letting you know, whatever you put on display, they're going to eat it up, okay? I did. Almost done here. Like I said, there really is no mold. Everybody's going to do it a different way. 4 kids in my family, we all turned out different. My sister and I are somewhat similar, but the other 2 turned out completely different. But all successful in our own right. Don't let anybody tell you you're not doing it, the right this way because your kid just didn't go to college, or your kids, they're not doing well in math. You must be a terrible teacher. No, they just don't like math. Let's maybe you got a friend in the homeschooling group that is knows how to teach math better than you. Okay, there's nothing wrong with you sharing, getting all the parents together and sharing some skills, right? Again, I think there's it's easy to compare yourself to others and what other people are doing and how successful other homeschool parents are, and look at their kids, they're doing this and that, and every kid's different. God gave you your kids; they're a blessing to you. Okay. So please don't get yourself into that mold, thinking that there's a perfect standard or something like that. It's just not true. Success is different. I already kind of talked about that. And you're an ambassador, okay, for living a godly life. Ultimately, you're that ambassador. God's going to handle the rest if you're prayerful and you teach your kids the right way, because when they're old, they won't depart from it. That's all I have, unless there are any questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. All right. So this next segment is going to be a Q&A session with some homeschool teens and then some homeschool grads. So we're going to go ahead and welcome them up to the stage at this point. There should be some microphones either by this piano or a couple over here by the keyboard that you can grab, and then there's one extra for somebody else. I think most of you guys know how to turn on the microphones. Yes. All right. And you can grab a seat somewhere along the stage, and then we'll just kind of ask some questions. Does everybody have it? Great, awesome. All right, so what I'd like, first of all, is for you each to just share who you are, what your name is, if you're still in school or if you've graduated, and what you're doing now in your life. So let's just start with that, and then we'll kind of dive into some questions and stuff in a few minutes. Okay? I'll let you start, Bethany.
My name is Bethany Wilson, and I graduated from college about 4 years ago. I went to school in Fort Worth, and I studied music composition. And now I work here at the church. I lead the music. I put all the arrangements together, and I teach Taekwondo all week long. And I also teach music lessons.
My name is Sarah Poole. I graduated high school last year. And I decided not to go to college, but to stay here and work and kind of save. I'm Bethany's assistant. I do whatever she needs me to do. I teach with her. And then I'm also kind of in charge of our fitness program here that we just started this year.
My name is David Scheller. I graduated from high school probably about, 4 years ago. I took some time off to go and run a martial arts school over in New Braunfels. Now I'm going to school at Texas State in San Marcos, and I'm studying criminal justice. but I'm also trying to get commissioning through the U.S. Army.
My name is Diego Rodriguez. I'm a 14-year-old ninth grader. I just finished a novel I've been writing, and I am currently a student at Miss Bethany's Taekwondo classes.
My name is Colin Robson, and I'm 14 years old, and I'm going into high school. And me and my family are getting ready to move to Minot, North Dakota.
All right. Well, with that being kind of an introduction, go ahead and we'll just kind of go down the line again. Tell me a little bit about were you homeschooled all the way through, or did you go off and on? Tell me a little bit about your homeschooling experience.
I was homeschooled all the way through except for 1 year when I got into a little rebellious phase. And my mother and I were having some disagreements about science, so I tried to go to a charter school my dad was working at. But I quickly realized they do not focus very well at the public school system. So I went back home as soon as that year was over because I just felt it was a lot easier to learn a lot more about how to learn and about the high school subjects especially. I did that in 7th grade. And I just really appreciated how much work my mother put into our high school years, researching and really helping us prepare for what we wanted to do. And it was quite an adventure to go through that together.
The thing I would say, I was homeschooled all the way through. The thing I would say about my homeschooling was it was very hands-on. We maybe didn't read a book that day, but we went outside and we looked at the rocks, or we would look at the plants. And we actually, one of my favorite projects we did was, my mom sent us out with a camera, and she said, find all the different kinds of plants you can. Now, we weren't doing botany at the time, but hey, it worked out, right? So we did, my sister and I, and we actually learned a lot. We learned how to identify which one was which, and we went through, and even now today, I'm like, oh, this is that plant, Maya. That's my sister. And she's like, I remember that. So it was very hands-on. Yeah.
So I was homeschooled all the way through. My first classroom experience was when I got to college. The biggest thing I would say is, you know, most of the time there's that big transition from high school to college, and it's just very different. College is very much you have to do your work, and a lot of it is done on your own or with other students rather than having a teacher overlooking your work. When I got to college, because a lot of our homework was assigned by my mom, and then of course we gave it back to her to grade, you know, self-grading is technically cheating. It just didn't seem that different because, again, most of the time we were just getting our work and we had to do it ourselves and then turn it in, very much like college.
So I have been homeschooled all the way through. My parents started teaching me as soon as I got into pre-K. I remember going into a few different classrooms. We started co-op when I was about 9, and we've just been a part of co-op ever since, even after we moved down to Del Rio, Texas. Recently, my mom has gotten us furtherly involved in it, and we're doing enrichment classes now. My homeschooling past has been very in-depth. My mom would always make sure we get things done. History and science we would do usually in the afternoons. That stuff, if we didn't get it done, we would just let it slide by on a regular basis. And then mathematics, writing and all that, and reading we would all get done in the morning, and we always had a great time with that. Yeah.
So I was public schooled all the way to 4th grade when I was in Ohio. Then when we moved to Texas, I ended up being homeschooled. It was kind of strange at first because my mom was my teacher and I wasn't really used to that. But then as time went on, me and my mom built a strong relationship together as she's my teacher and stuff. And homeschool's been pretty cool and stuff.
So along that line, Colin, since you've experienced both and I know that you're about to experience another transition as you're moving. Do you have any strong feelings about whether or not you'd like to go back to public school, or if you'd rather remain being homeschooled?
I'd probably rather remain in homeschool because public school is kind of just usually kids would maybe like bully you or something like that, and that would be tough. But and like how like high school is like where there's a bunch of drama and stuff. Well, since I'm homeschooled and stuff, I'm not really gonna have to worry about that stuff. So.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Okay. So now that you've kind of given us a little bit of your schooling background, tell me, what do you feel like is like the one thing that you'd like people to know about homeschooling that maybe people don't know because they haven't experienced it themselves? What would you tell the public schooler or somebody who's not really well versed in homeschooling, like beyond the stereotypes? What is homeschooling, or yeah? So, and if you're not quite ready, and somebody else is ready to like pop up with an answer, then I'll let you kind of have that freedom as well. So. Okay, well then I'm gonna come back to that one. Be thinking about that one. In the meantime, tell me, like, is there a favorite memory that you have of being homeschooled?
Probably just how much mom loved to take us places and go and do things, and using museums and things like that. We did not always live here in Del Rio. I was actually born in Virginia, and I don't remember as much of that. My older sister does. But just that we had a lot of freedom to go and do things, and I actually think probably my favorite memory of it is how many times mom made me come to the church to do my schoolwork, so we could work at the church and then do school and then work and then school and then work, and it was just a little bit more freedom in the schooling. It was a lot of fun, but also getting to do just more hands-on things, seeing what mom and dad do for their work, seeing if mom wanted to take us out to a museum, just being very free with how we did our schooling, not sitting at a desk for 8 hours and making sure, you have to check all these boxes, but learning a lot of different ways that I think a lot of times other people don't get to experience.
Yeah, great, thank you.
I think mine is similar to Bethany's. My dad never had like a normal schedule. He always worked shift work, and if we had gone to school, we wouldn't have even seen him on some of those until he had a day off. And we loved spending time with our dad. We would all put on boots and jeans and hats, and we'd go out and we'd build fences, or we'd go out and tear down a barn. All of these hands-on life experiences that are very important that we would have missed if we had been in school all day.
For me, it does kind of go back to what Bethany said, which was the freedom. It wasn't all the time, but there were some days where I could finish my schoolwork, by 11 o'clock in the morning, and I had the rest of the day to work on anything else I wanted to work on. So me and my brothers have some good memories, some bad memories, of just kind of messing around in the backyard, them throwing me into the pool, and us just getting to hang out and be more of a family. All of us are still talking, and I definitely contribute that to the fact that we were homeschooled. Sometimes, did get a little out of hand. Sometimes Dad came home and had to, knock a few heads. Despite being the youngest, I still got myself into trouble with both of them. And just, especially being homeschooled, I learned pretty quickly that, especially in life, if you're going to want to do something, you've got to put in the effort to it, and no one's going to really, there will be people to help you, but if you're not going to push yourself, it doesn't matter how many people are pushing you, it's not going to happen. And so I would push myself to finish early so I could have the rest of the day off. There were some days, though, finishing school at 5 was not fun.
Like you guys, I really enjoy the time that we can just spend with my family. when I was back up in Wichita, Kansas, there was this one area I will always remember. This one building. It's called the Exploration Place. It's like this giant museum. Teaches you science. There's some parts about flight, math. There's all sorts. It was actually there that I found I really, really liked medieval history because they had this giant built-in castle on the inside with all sorts of facts about the castles and the knights and blacksmiths, everything. It was there that we had a lot of good memories with my family. We would just go and we would have our my aunt and uncle would bring their kids along with us too. My grandparents would come, and just all together we would learn different things. There was one exhibit that would always change like every 3 months, and every single time we would learn something new, something different. And I think those memories are the ones that I'm always going to be able to look back on, and that was my favorite time as a homeschooler. That was it for me. That was the peak of it all. So.
I also agree with what everyone said about like homeschool kind of being like a little. You have like a little bit of a freedom. Like maybe one day if your mom's tired, you could wear pajamas while you do school, or like maybe you could take a vacation and go to Disney World whenever you want, but you still have to do the school. So that's the kind of like thing that I don't like. But yeah, I agree with what everyone said about like spending time with family, going to like different areas and having kind of like a little bit of more of a freedom.
Okay, so I'm going to talk for just a second because I was also homeschooled. And so I think one of the most beautiful parts about being a homeschooler is the fact that you can go to those museums or to the theme parks or just to the library in the middle of the day, whereas before you could just do like the weekends or when during the summer when everybody else is off at the same time. Because I was public schooled initially, there is a lot of beauty to be had and the freedom to go do those field trips as a family when everybody else is in school, and to have the run of the whole zoo or the whole museum pretty much to yourself and a few other homeschool families. And you'll see them and you'll know who they are because they're out of school at odd times too, and you just kind of wave knowingly and enjoy your day. So there's a lot of freedom to be had in just the fact that you can set your own schedules, and so it's really really a cool and a beautiful thing to be able to do that. So now that we've talked a little bit about some of our favorite memories, I want you to think about what you would say to somebody who is like on the fence about homeschooling, maybe an older child, taking them out of the public school system and potentially bringing them home to homeschool, and either talk to like the parents, or you can talk to like the teen who might be apprehensive about coming home and not being able to, do school the way they're so used to doing school. What are some of the good things? For me, my parents just wanted to get us through middle school. That was my mom's goal. She had a horrible middle school experience. The girls were just really yucky when she was in middle school, and so that was just her goal. If I can just get them through middle school, then I'm going to let them go back to public school and high school. And so my freshman year, my parents said, okay, are you ready to go back to public school? And I was, no, I do not want to go to public school. And for me, it was seeing the amount of time that my counterparts, my public school counterparts, sat in a classroom all day long listening to lectures, and then they still came home with tons of homework, some of them upwards of 3 or 4 hours of homework that they would have in one night. And just the idea of having so little freedom after experiencing so much freedom was enough for me to say, no way do I want to go to public school. So tell me about, like, what is it that you think is so great about homeschooling?
I actually probably found that it was learning how I learn. that really, really helped me. Having the environment to have to be more self-motivated made my college experience so much easier. Just having to have scheduled my own time, and our parents are very good about letting us learn the hard lessons of like, oh, you want to avoid math until it's time for bed? That's okay. You can do math at 10 p.m. if that's when you want to do it. Or oh, you don't want to finish your geometry this year? That's fine. I'll make you just finish it when in a couple years from now. And I actually had that. It was a very hard experience that my mom taught me a very good lesson because I had to do the whole book over again. And that helped me learn a lot about how I learn and how to be self-motivated, so that when I went to college, it really didn't feel like much of a change. Everyone's like, it's so different being in a classroom. And I honestly did not feel that way because I'd been so prepared and self-motivated. So especially in high school, although it was very difficult, I felt that was just an amazing opportunity to learn, and it helped me so very much be prepared for getting a job and learning in college.
Thank you.
I think I would say it's like what's important to you. For my mom, what was important to her was that our hearts were following God. And actually, that's a big reason why I didn't go to college, because my choice was God was telling me, this is my place. But right now, this is where I'm staying. And so while everyone is telling me, you need to go to college, this is the path you're supposed to follow, I knew in my heart that that's not what God wanted. Yet, maybe someday, but not yet. So what is important to you? What's important for you to teach your kids? And it's your job to teach them. God gave them to you. And it's your job. How do you want them to be? What kind of people do you want them to be? And that's your job to teach them. So I just say what's important to you, what God has shown you, you need to be teaching them that. And being at home is the best opportunity for you to do that. And I guess that's what I would say to parents. I don't know if I have anything to say to kids because I didn't go to public school at all. So that's a whole different story.
Thank you.
Kind of bouncing off of what both Sarah and Bethany said is, for one, again, I really didn't feel that college was much different from my homeschool experience. A lot of the work you do in college is on your own, and if you have a question, yeah, you can go to office hours, but most of the time, all 100 of the kids in your class have the same question. So you finding an open space in their office hours is pretty limited, especially going back with COVID right now. So while I was homeschooled, I had to find other resources to figure out what I was having a problem with. And so in college, I took that same lesson with me, and not just using the resources that I've been given, but trying to find resources that, maybe the instructor just didn't know about that resource, and you can still use it to your advantage. The other part about time management and learning how to make your own schedule, I'm in college, and I have a lot of classmates who I have, I'll say, instructed on how to build a good schedule for the entire week or the month or the year to make sure that they're getting things done. So
Absolutely.
I would say the thing I would tell to specifically high schoolers who might think that being homeschooled might not prepare them for college is, given my experience, I would say it prepared me more for college than I would have been if I went to public school.
I'm going to piggyback on that for just 1 second, because my experience was that when my mother gave me an assignment for the year, okay, this is your history curriculum this year, she expected me to read through it all, the entire thing. Is that pretty much your experience as well? So that I didn't realize at the time wasn't exactly what was happening in the public schools. The teacher would try to get through all the material, but often does not. And once I transitioned to actually teaching in the public schools, I realized just how difficult it is to make it all the way through a curriculum in a year. Even though you're putting in all those hours, it's still very challenging. So what I experienced when I got to college was I knew how to sit down and read through my entire textbook, but most of my public school counterparts did not know how to sit down and actually read through the textbook and study and be able to be ready for the exams at the end of the semester with their college courses. So definitely some good learning and studying skills that are built into homeschooling, especially when you get to that high school, middle school as well, but mainly in high school. You generally have students who are independent learners at that point. Your parents aren't putting in tons of instruction generally, and it's just more guidance along the way if you run into difficulties. Is that correct? Yes. So, and I think that most of our homeschool parents will probably agree with that. That usually, once you get to that point, you're just saying, okay, let's plot out your course for the year and now get to work. Let's do it. And they might give you some pointers along the way. Okay, we're going to break it up into chunks, certain segments that I want you to do. But other than that, you're pretty much on your own most of the time. And that's not a bad thing. It definitely prepares you for college. So going on, Diego?
One of the two biggest benefits for me homeschooling, one is that I can actually look forward to the career I'm wanting to do. In public school, everyone is given basically the same curriculum. Everyone is given the same classes. You do have your choices of other classes, but they don't exactly hone in on you. They don't go one-on-one and ask you, what are you looking to be? What do you want to be when you grow up? They may see it in you at times, but you may not always know. For me, my mom went through multiple different curriculums for language arts before I actually realized I had a love for writing. After a while, I actually started writing more and more. I think it was during the time I was reading the Narnian series that I found how much I love books and writings. And after Narnia, I got obsessed with Tolkien. And but you can have your kids follow whatever career path they want, like it being glorious to God, of course, but you can see to it that they get what the career they're looking forward to, that they're trying to get to. It's a whole lot easier than in public school. You can go one-on-one with them, and you can teach them the way they do it. If you can't teach them what they're looking forward to do, there are multiple curriculums out there that can help your child with that. The second biggest benefit I have seen is that your kids, I think, basing it off of what Ms. Sarah said, can grow really close to the Lord. You can guide them to the Lord all the time. You're always there looking out for. You can be always there looking out for them, and you can really guide them and see to it that they grow up to love the Lord with all their heart, all their mind, and all their soul. So, yeah.
Colin.
Diego kind of took what I was going to say about building a stronger relationship with God. I would say you have more time to do things that you want, like with Diego, like reading books and stuff, and him with writing a book. You'll have more time to maybe study a verse in the Bible, learn a verse, and like grow closer to God. And you could use those verses, like with my Ace Paces. There's a verse that I learned with each pace, and there's like 12 paces. So I learned like quite a lot of verses, and I could use those verses like through hard times in my life when I graduate or something like that, when I'm out of the home. And it's just pretty cool that you could have the time to do that, and also build a stronger relationship with your mom, your dad, or your siblings. And yeah.
All right. So now you've had maybe a little bit of time to think about it. You know, everybody has in mind their idea of what a homeschooler is. And it has changed over the course of time. When I was homeschooling, everybody imagined denim jumpers. And fortunately, I think as a whole, we've outgrown that look. Um, but there was that kind of stereotypical homeschooler that people have in mind. And so, is there some sort of like homeschooling? I don't know, like model that you think, well, that's not accurate, or maybe, well, actually, that is accurate, and you'd like to say, yeah, I think most homeschoolers are like that, or actually, most homeschoolers aren't like that. Anything like that that you'd like to say?
This is funny actually because we were just talking about this the other night, weren't we? I was telling Miss Bethany that something that was very important to my mother was to make sure that we knew the correct pronunciations for things. Because that can be a stereotype that very quickly comes true with homeschoolers. They're always reading from a book. So mom found all these websites and she made us practice and study and she made us do just lots of language stuff. We did word roots was a really helpful one. That was really, really helpful to figure out how to not only say things, but when you see a new word, break it apart and know what it means. My sister and I were looking at a word last night. I think, what was it? Antithesis. And I said, you know that one? And she's like, well, I know what it means, but I don't really know how people use it. But she knew what it meant just by breaking down the different sections of the words. She's like, obviously, you know what that means. And so these just different websites and a couple curriculums really helped us kind of break that stereotype of not being able to say a word correctly so that people know what you're talking about.
That's funny because I make fun of myself all the time for that one. I don't know how to pronounce things. I do it so poorly. But I would just say homeschoolers, in being in the homeschool community for a very long time, they're individuals. Yes, there are stereotypes, and some of them, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I don't know, are real. But we are all individuals, and I think that's one of the, going back to the benefits, sorry, I'm jumping back, is that we can be individuals. We're not all clumped together trying to fit into this socially acceptable or promoted idea, but we're all individuals and we can learn about what we want to learn about, or just do what we want to do, what God has given us, what God has gifted us with. So I think just that we're all individuals, and everyone is, so homeschooling kind of brings that out even more.
Probably one of the biggest stereotypes I hear about, especially at college, is, being socially awkward. I wouldn't say I had this problem because all of my college friends do not believe me when I said I was homeschooled all of my life. They will straight up tell me I am lying to them. They don't believe me. And I have seen awkward homeschoolers. They didn't really, I'll say, get to socialize or whatever happened. But as far as the socialization, that really is going to go up to the individual. There are some people who are just going to be more comfortable being around others. There are just some people who, I'll say, they just want to be that person in the corner reading a book. And I've seen it both on the public school side and I've seen it in the homeschool side. But yeah, there's not one of my college friends who believes me that I was actually homeschooled until, I have to show them my transcript, and then they have to try and find the school online, which is actually more funny.
David, you basically took what I was about to say. As homeschoolers, we can be very socially awkward. Some of us don't get out as much as is needed, but but really, we're all we all are individuals. We all have our own way of doing things, or we all have our personalities. Public schoolers either think that we're really nerdy or we slack off very much. I wouldn't say either is is true, but really, with homeschooling, you get the option to be who you want to be, and with all that, be the individual God set made you to be. So
You guys also took what I was gonna say too. Since I started being homeschooled, when I went to co-op, I saw like all these people like doing random things, and like they had their own personalities. When you go to public school, you have to worry about like what you wear, what you look like, and like how you act and stuff. But when you go to like something like co-op, you don't really have to worry about that because everyone's has like their own thing. Like either you're a magician, a jokester, anything like that. You don't really have to worry about that. There is one stereotype that I do have to say that is true, and that's wearing your pajamas while you're doing school. Probably
Okay.
every single homeschooler could say.
Raise your
that-
hand here if you've worn pajamas while homeschooling. No? Yes, yes. Okay. I was not allowed to. No.
all the time.
But my mom was out to prove the world wrong. We were on the very cusp of the homeschool movement, and I think that, yeah, like when we first started out, we had to get to work at 8:30 in the morning, and we stood up and said the Pledge of Allegiance for the first couple of years. Eventually that died away, but I mean, it was very much like my mother was trying to like recreate a little bit of public school scenario inside the home. Eventually, I think she realized that it couldn't be done and it wasn't necessary, but it took her a while to break out of that like public school mentality and realize what homeschooling actually could be. So right now, I think we're going to take any questions from the audience. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask any of our homeschool students, and then we'll go to break. Yes, please. Absolutely.
I just wanted to say one of the benefits that I really learned in my life, having been homeschooled, about the socially awkwardness, is it's really just about how you foster your own child as a parent. My parents did an amazing job of teaching me how to socialize with other people. But one amazing benefit of homeschooling I've learned is most public schoolers, generally speaking, their stereotype is they can only talk to people who are their peers, their own age. Most homeschoolers are just as comfortable talking to an elderly person, talking to someone their parents' age, talking to children, talking to someone their own age. And that really can be very helpful in your life, socially speaking.
Yes. Especially, I think, when it was time to go to college. Even I took a public school course in high school, a driver's ed course over the summer, and the teachers were floored and shocked that I could come and talk to them and ask them questions. They were not used to students, feeling comfortable coming up and talking to them. And the same thing when I went on to college. They just could not get over the fact that I was so comfortable speaking to adults that were older than me. So, any questions? All right, then I think we're going to go ahead and take our recess a little bit early. We'll come back here at 4:15 and continue on. Java over here is open for coffee and snacks if you need anything. Our fellowship hall down there is open for you to talk individually to some of the parents that are here, showing some of their curriculum and some of the other resources that are available to homeschoolers in the area. And also, I believe that if you have kids over in the children's area, you may just want to like peek in on them and make sure they're doing all right. See if they need a snack or something like that. I believe that we have pretzels or something like that for them, but they may need something beyond that. I don't know. So if you have kids, go ahead and peek in on them, make sure they're doing all right. So we'll see you guys back here at 4:15. Thank you so much.